First off, I'm Dennis Carpenter, and I get the privilege of serving as your superintendent, and I want to thank all of you for taking some time to be with us this evening. I tell you what, it's a super exciting time to be a part of LSR 7. When I think about the opportunity that we have ahead of us for young people, it gets me extremely excited. And I know many of you are here because you had to have been living under a rock to have not heard about this notion of comprehensive facilities master plan. Raise your hand if you've been living under that rock. Nobody. I thought not. So we've all heard about this notion of comprehensive facilities master plan. What I want to offer is, I don't want us to miss in that process the part that you're probably not paying as much attention to. You're paying attention to that notion of potential capacity issues and boundary changes. I bet that's why most of you are here. But there's a second notion, and I would argue that it's a more important notion, and that is this whole notion of preparing learning spaces for our students to be equipped to work and participate in a job economy that does not even exist today. And so how can we do something with our interior spaces that already exist across our district and those that we may or may not build in the future to prepare young people? And our Board of Education, I think I saw one member in the audience this evening, they've given us some permission to live through that mission, which is preparing each student in our district for success in life. So in order to fulfill that, there's an opportunity inherent in the reason we're here this evening, and that's through this process, we have that unique opportunity to shape the future of our students. Keeping in mind that we prepare kids for their futures, not for our yesterdays, right? Huge difference. And the board also granted permission to start this school year through their priorities. And we have 3 board priorities that shape the work of this superintendent and administration throughout the course of this year. Priority number 1 is increasing the achievement of every student in our district through innovative practices. That's a big part of what we're going to be talking about this evening, innovative practices. Student well-being. How do we know that the children are okay? And equity in program design and implementation. What does that mean? Equity in program design and implementation simply means that we give every child what he or she needs in any given situation. Realizing that in a place called school, all kids don't come from the same starting line. And when starting lines are different, we must do things different to get to the profile of a graduate that we want for every single child. And we're going to commit to doing that as a school district. Priority number 2 is why we sit here today. Ensure equitable, every child what he or she needs in every situation. Access to future-ready learning environments by further engaging stakeholders in the development of a comprehensive facilities master plan. And once we have that plan in place, and folks, I heard something today that just blew me away. Many of us are giving away 4, 8, 12 over the course of this series, 12 nights of our lives to do this work. And someone said the other day, yesterday or just today, they said, Dr. Carter, the plan already exists, why don't you just tell us what it is? Man, that was discouraging. Because we're doing this work, we're bringing community in, having a good conversation with community, only for somebody to believe that it's smoke and mirrors. I just got to keep building trust and keep letting you know who this superintendent is, because we do the work of the community, and that's what this is about. But once we have that plan, we start aligning our fiscal resources, and then we look at the adjustments and boundaries if that's necessary to meet the instructional program and the facility needs of our pre-K-12 students. Board priority number 3, and this is what this is about. Somebody said, Dr. Carpenter, they said it last night, and they posed the question last evening. They said, you built MIC in conjunction with UMKC, and you never asked our opinion, why are we doing it now? And again, I said, it's a priority. When this superintendent came in, I heard a lot about building trust with the community again. I heard a lot about engaging the community in the dialogue again. That's what this is about. Elevating communications by continuing to foster confidence in our district through increased involvement opportunities and interconnected public relations and engagement. Put another way, less of what I'm doing doing right now, speaking to you, but the opportunity to engage, and we'll have one such opportunity this evening. So what's our goal today? We're not going to get into a plan. It does not exist right now. We're going to try and inspire each other to envision what our futures might look like for our young people. And I challenge all of you to lean into the conversation this evening and let's explore those possibilities together. So I want to have a little bit of fun with it. Somebody said you already have a plan. Well, there it is. There's the plan. There's the plan. Throw darts at it, chew away at it, but that's the plan. Folks, we're going to build this together. And at the end of this, we're going to have something that all of us can be proud of for the young folks of LSR 7. That's what matters. That's what matters. And you're going to hear from some of those same voices this evening. And you're going to hear what they say about what they would like to have in a place called school. And that's why we do this work. We do this work for their future, not for our present, not our past. Thank you for being here. We have some awesome partners. Sure have. We're not doing this work alone as a school district. We have some awesome partners, and you're going to hear from them this evening. We went through a very robust process of trying to identify some partners who could help lead us through this process. And we had several groups that came to the table. Through that process, we interviewed some, and we went through some rubrics. I see the teachers here, you know all about these rubrics. And we got to the point of DLR, Link, and Gould Evans. And they are our partners. One of the things that drew me to the DLR Gould Evans presentation was they said, Dr. Carpenter, we know you have a strong communications team, but we have some external communication experts who've done this work across the country, and we want to bring them to the table as well. And they have been very, very valuable, our partners from Link. So let's give them all a round of applause for their take.
Thank you, Dr. Carpenter. My name is Scott Bosch, and I'm with the LR Group, and I'm facilitating this evening's events to kind of navigate us through the presentation. As we share additional information for you all, we also have a conversation throughout the evening as we look at how we can move Lee Summit into the future and how that will impact the district as we move forward. Before I go much further, I do want to point out a few individuals. Dr. Carpenter mentioned our collaboration with Link Strategic Partnership. So around the room we have Corey, we have Jemin, Molly, and Josh. And they're going to be helping us through the evening, gathering cards, engaging in the conversation a bit later. But I wanted you to meet them on an individual basis because there's more time for a one-on-one engagement at the end. I also have my partner Kevin Grusher with me from the LR Group, and he's going to contribute to the discussion, as well as Rick Bramer with Applied Economics. And then we have many folks from the district that will, as we bring up to engage with, we'll make those introductions. Before I go much further, I just wanted to give a brief overview of the agenda this evening. So first off, we're going to talk a little bit about the Comprehensive Facility Master Plan, CFMP, and give an overview of why it's important, what opportunities does it allow the district to look at as we move forward, and kind of give us this 5 to 10 year vision of how we move into the future. We'll give an overview of future-ready learning, and that's a very important component as we engage with it on this Comprehensive Facility Master Plan, because that's all about the students, and it's really helping understand how we can move students into the future and improve the future outlook for them. We'll have a conversation about the lay of the land, and that's really with our Applied Economics consultant up here to talk about the demographics. He's been working with the district for many years and can share specific demographics from year to year. So we'll get into very technical data there, and also talk about how that impacts our understanding of capacity within the district. Finally, we'll move into the community engagement process, give an overview of what that looks like, the feedback loop, how you can be engaged throughout the entire process, and then open it up for community conversation. So I believe all of you were handed a comments card as you walked in. Please write your comments down, and we'll be collecting them throughout the evening, because that will really allow us to have that conversation at this point. We'll bring a panel up and hopefully answer as many of those questions as we can. And then finally, as the evening concludes, we'll have the opportunity for a gallery walk. So you can kind of see 3 stations distributed around the room, and that's the opportunity for more one-on-one engagement if you have specific questions after the conversation. So I'd like to bring Kyle Burrell up, he's Director of Facilities with the district, and talk to us a little bit about why the CFMP process is so important and how it came about.
Thanks, Scott. So we've had a lot of questions on what is a comprehensive facility master plan. So I just wanted to real briefly explain how this process works for us, because I know it's a little bit confusing. Most of the community believes that we're just doing a boundary study. And what our board has directed is for us to think a little deeper about this and to think about the future of education. And that's what we're going to show you a little bit about tonight. The phase 1 work that you'll see outlined on our schedule does deal with capacity of buildings and methodology that can be used. Will be discussed on how to handle capacity. But the overarching part of this master plan is how we handle the future look and feel of the educational environment in this district. And we'll show you a little bit more about that in presentation here in a little bit. So the future ready learning, the collaborative learning, whatever we call it, it can have an impact on building capacity. And so we want to be prepared for that. We're looking for the best long-term plan that we can put together that can be fixed for a reasonable amount of time and handle the growth that is in the district. So we know and appreciate that people want to talk about numbers and kids and who's moving around, but we appreciate your time and letting us kind of talk about the future ready learning side of this plan. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kyle. So as we started some of the initial discussions with the district and the Comprehensive Facility Master Plan strategic team, we started to have several ideas out on the table, or concerns, concepts, whatever you want to call them. But as we started to look at them in more depth, we really identified 3 categories that we could use to organize them as we move forward. So we have 3 categories identified here: future ready learning, equity, and capacity. As we move through the presentation this evening and into future presentations, I would really encourage you to keep those 3 categories as a lens that you view all of this exercise through. Future ready learning is probably the most important because it is all about the student. How will they engage in the community and in the profession as they move forward? Are we teaching them today like we need to be teaching them, or do we need to change some of our thought into that? And we'll have members from the district, the educators, talk a bit more about that briefly. Capacity is another category that we define, and that's really where we start to examine facilities. So are the existing facilities enhancing this future-ready learner? Or are they static? Do they only allow us to teach as we've been teaching? Are programs distributed appropriately? So all of these layers start to overlay as we study capacity. Yes, boundaries are part of that discussion, but there's larger ideas that are involved in the study of that. And then finally, equity is this bridge in between. When we talk about equity, it's really about equity of programs to every student, as Dr. Carpenter alluded to, and Dr. Collier will talk about it briefly in a minute. So those are really the lenses that I would like you to consider as we move through this engagement process. So I'd like to call up Dr. Katie Collier to talk a little bit about what the district's been up to from an instructional standpoint and why this is important as we move into this comprehensive facility master plan.
Good evening. Thank you again for being here this evening. As I look at the audience tonight, I am reminded that there are communities across our state and quite frankly across our country that yearn for the level of participation in schools that we experience in Lee Summit. So thank you for giving up your time again and for being present this evening and engaging in this conversation. So as you've already heard tonight, this work is first and foremost about our students and our willingness to risk and think differently for the benefit of our students and the future of the educational experience that we're going to be providing long-term in the Lee Summit R7 school district. So our mission is that we prepare each student for success in life. And ultimately, at the end of our pre-K-12 student experience, we all want to bear witness to the graduation of our students as they walk across the stage. That they are prepared for life, that they are for college, workforce, and this work. And we're going to hear this notion of future-ready learning. Quite frankly, school systems, for as long as they've existed, have worked to prepare students for what? Their future. We're living in a time where there is such rapid change occurring all around us. And the rate of technology inundates our lives and the lives of our children. And so therefore, we are challenged to think differently about the educational process for our children. So tonight we're going to invite you to imagine, to reimagine. Perhaps you can remember, dig back into your memory bank, think about your experience as students. Can you remember the sound of your feet walking down the tile floor in the hallways? Do you remember the feel of locker lock? Do you remember the head of the person sitting in front of you in fifth hour? Do you remember the smell of the textbooks that you opened? So we're building memories for our students, but what we want to ensure is our beliefs and what we know about best practices when it comes to learning are reflected in our practices, but also in the physical spaces that our students enter every day. Because truly, our physical spaces should be a reflection of our beliefs about what we want for students when it comes to learning. One thing I would ask you to also consider is that our students come home and report to you their experiences at school. But as we are grounded in our district with a commitment to continuous improvement, together we're always should be asking, how do we make that even better? So when we think about doing this work, that first you walk in these doors thinking first and foremost about school boundaries. Many districts across the nation begin that work with numbers and lines. Numbers and line thinking only constricts what potential possibilities are for our students. That is why I harken back to Dr. Carpenter's comments earlier, that we want to begin this engagement series thinking beyond numbers and lines. So if we think about this physical space here, our instructional goals in our school district for this year, referenced in the board priorities that Dr. Carpenter mentioned, are focused on student achievement through innovative practices, student equity in program and design, and also student well-being. A space such as this certainly doesn't encourage collaboration, likely doesn't foster the well-being of the inhabitants of this space. As we think about future-ready learning, we know this. Resources are growing exponentially. Options are growing exponentially for our students. So when you look at this screen here, we know that students can learn beyond the walls of their classroom. I asked you to dig back into your memory banks a few moments ago and remember your school experience. I, as a second grader, when I learned about the water cycle, I didn't have the opportunity to connect with someone across the world and think about how to solve and incorporate clean water solutions across the world. Today, our students have those opportunities. Our teachers do amazing work every day with our students. How do we create these spaces that help foster and facilitate and support what our teachers want to do with our students to prepare them for their futures? So industry is changing rapidly well. Physical spaces of schools and workspaces across the country are changing. And one of the reasons they're changing too is also to support the well-being of the students and the adults in those spaces. And we want there to be this marriage between our beliefs and the spaces students reside in. So across our district, we have spaces that resemble some of what you're looking at here. Our task is thinking about multiplication of that. How do we multiply the sum of the spaces that exist across our school district? How do we multiply that across schools? That's an example of equity. So future-ready learning, whether it's a pre-K student, a fifth grader, a student sitting in chemistry class, all students should be exposed to and have the opportunity to explore, to expand upon curiosity, to interact, to solve problems, to work with the City of Lee Summit, and partner on real problems, or real issues, or real opportunities here in our city. That's future-ready learning. So what does the business industry have to say? The business industry is telling us that our students, when they graduate, need more than the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. But they tell us instead this: today's employees need to think critically, solve problems, innovate, collaborate, and communicate more effectively at every level within the organization. But what they tell us is those skills are lacking. So if our workforce is echoing back to educational systems, that those are skills that are needed, but that are missing, we as a system want to ensure that when our students graduate, they have those skills. So working first semester alongside this work, you will hear from and see Dr. Kephart and Dr. Sharp a little bit later in this presentation. And they are working with a group to develop what we refer to as this portrait of a graduate. A portrait of a graduate will articulate, as a student moves through the system pre-K-12, those skills we hope, what we intend for them to acquire as they move throughout our system. So what's the student voice? We cannot do this work without talking to our students. And like when you've been talking to students at homes or in your homes or in your neighborhoods too. Because the question is, am I moving, right? So that's why we're talking to our students and our neighbors. So here's what students told us about when we asked them the important question of what is it that they think create powerful learning experiences, and what else do they hope for or want to have continued in their classrooms. So we have a student advisory group, and that consists of 7th through 12th graders. Our students told us some of these things. They want chances to create. They want to have continued time to collaborate. They want independence. They want to have continued support from their teachers and their school counselors. They want flexibility in their school day. They want options. They want to continue to learn how to take care of each other. So we asked that same question to other groups throughout last school year. We have a team referred to as the Instructional Operations Team in our school district. And we asked principals on more than one occasion about this. And we surveyed teachers at the end of last school year. And collectively, across the board, these were the responses that we heard that resulted in this concept that we're referring to as the instructional compass. Simply put, this is a graphic that represents our beliefs about what should occur in classrooms to create those powerful learning experiences that we're talking about. So the 4 C's are on this compass: communication, creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. So what does that mean? That means your students are learning how to think from multiple perspectives. They're learning how to make claims. They're learning how to support their beliefs. They're learning how to produce for different purposes. And then we believe that learning should be transferable. That if I learn certain concepts within biology, I apply them somewhere else through my day. That learning doesn't occur in compartments. Our lives don't function in compartments. We want to help our teachers who work on these skills constantly. We want to continue to help multiply that across the district. And then here it is, choice. Students want choice. We need feedback from students to the staff and from staff to students. Experiential learning is critical. And at the end of the day, what you're here to talk about, to learn more about, is environment. Environment matters. So this is all about preparedness. Our system is about preparedness for students for college, career, workforce, success in life. These engagement series are about preparedness, about us listening to you, about us answering questions to help inform the recommendations that will come forward. And we'll be talking about that timeline here later in this evening's program. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Carter. So before we move to the next section, I'd like to encourage you to fill out the comment cards as we go through this evening. Generate a lot of comments for us, please. That's where we are able to engage with your thoughts. I'd also failed to mention at the beginning that this presentation will be available online at the Comprehensive Facility Master Plan website after all of the first series of engagements have been completed. So I approved over last night. I remembered one back before. So now I'd like to call up Kyle Gorell again, and he's going to talk to us about future-ready learning and take us a bit deeper into that understanding and really start to engage with how does that impact the environment.
All right, thank you. Okay, my goal tonight is to help reinforce and help you guys understand the why to what a lot of the educational concepts that Dr. Collier was just talking about. And so he holds some of these things, I'll refer back to her. So it all starts with our students. So equitable access to learning environments and board's priority. It really starts with our students. So let's talk real quickly about who are these students in our district. We have a diverse group of learners. As you can see, we have a lot of diversity in the district. There are many categories. 341 English learners and 30 languages spoken in the district. That is an absolutely amazing fact, I think. 19% free and reduced, which is a 6% increase in the last 10 years. There are almost 2,500 kids in this district that have some diagnosed issue that they're being helped with their learning. That's an astounding number also. So when you look at all of that, we prepare each one of these students for life. And I believe that one of the misconceptions about equity is that it doesn't count for my kid, okay? But that's not part of the definition of equity. It's about each student. It's not about all students. The concepts I'm going to show you here in a minute, they're about each student. And it's just a very important concept for us all to think about, that we're really engaged in a learning for every student. So who are all these kids? We know that generations, and we've followed this, we know they're connected multitaskers. That's about the quickest way I can summarize what kids are today. And here's the fact of the matter, to reinforce what Dr. Collier said. Our classrooms were designed 100 years ago. They came out of the Industrial Revolution. And many people call this the Ford education model, because this country had the need for factory workers. And so what did they do? They took kids by age group, they set up classrooms by ages, and we marched kids by age and by subject through their education education so they could be ready to be production line workers. And so the classrooms largely resemble that process. And this process made the assumption that all students are ready to learn the same thing at the same time with the same person, and that a teacher was under the control of everything that student needed. They could be all things to all students. So our education system was really designed to educate the masses, not to educate each individual student. And unfortunately, our classrooms still look largely the same. So what we know is that learning is not just about a curriculum, it's a complex interplay between so many things. We know these kids have so many things going on in their lives today, and I'd say I think my kids have more going on socially and emotionally than I did. I think this is just a complex world they live in. And so what our job here is with this comprehensive facility master plan is to come up with a thoughtful connection between our buildings and the students and their learning environments. So the more we can help teachers and students have some influence over their learning environment and have them to be sensitive to their needs, the more successful we'll be. So moving on, let's just go back. I'm going to take you through a basic explanation of what a student's basic needs are. So Maslow's hierarchy. We know that the basic needs of a kid, their physiological needs and their needs for safety and security, they have to be met before kids can move on to more advanced thoughts of self-comfort and learning. And then in Bloom's taxonomy, when you talk about the stages of learning, what we're really going for, what Dr. Collier mentioned, is that we want kids to become creative thinkers. Creative thinking is the highest level of learning. So to do this, we're going to be working with our architects to have some building standards that address all kinds of physiological needs in buildings. And we're very fortunate at Lee's Summit to have excellent facilities, and some of these things are already addressed. But it's also about a culture that will be fostered that gives kids a feeling of respect, diversity, love, security, caring, any words you want to put in there, but a culture that helps these kids feel safe and secure in their buildings so they can learn. So let's talk a minute about creative minds. How do we help kids develop creative minds and why? Well, first of all, it's a vision of the school district. We encourage innovation and creativity, and we need to live that with our facilities. So one thing that we know is that children are more creative. They're creative. We've all seen our toddlers come out, they come up with the most amazing ideas. But what the common thought is that we're educating kids out of their creativity through over-structured environments. So if you survey preschoolers, what are they going to say about school? We've all seen them running into school, they're excited, they're happy, they're having a great time. So what we're hoping to solve is why is it that kids, when they get into secondary school, their level of engagement declines. And their level of creativity declines as they get older. So, I don't know why. If I knew, I would probably be working right now, but it's a good question. Pablo Picasso said, every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up. So, a great thing. So how can we support this in buildings? One is to address right brain, left brain kinds of thinking. So the right brain, of course, giving people more creative space, flexible space that they can use. Left brain, giving them more familiar space that's structured. And what this does is help to engage both sides of the brain, have multisensory environments. So why are the senses important? Well, first of all, as Dr. Collier mentioned, we all remember things, don't we? Senses, they bring things out of the brain. The senses are the gateway to the mind. And so, if we know that senses help retain and retrieve memories, we need to pay attention to them in our buildings. So certain standards related to color, painting with a purpose, having chromatic changes that can help influence students' moods, using materials with a purpose to help engage students in space in many ways. And then using light with natural and diffuse, different ways to help impact learning. Color temperature has a big impact. I'm just kind of rolling through some standards here real quick. And we also know that light can be fun and engaging. And natural day lighting, of course, will be a very important part of our design standards. So moving on, how's the student's body play into this? Physical and emotional fitness is absolutely critical because we know that students learn when they're healthy and they feel good. Students who don't feel good, they're not going to learn. And so a wellness program is going to be a part of our culture. So there's a powerful connection between the body and the brain. And it's at two levels. There's the fine motor connection that tells us that we need to make peace with fidgeting. And we know concentration levels don't meet the same time spans that we expect kids to sit in a classroom. And so you see an adult 25 to 30 minutes, so I'm about to lose you all here in about 3 minutes. So feel free to kind of move around and get comfortable. But also movement stimulates the vestibular system. It wakes your brain up. So this is a brain scan. On the left is when you're sitting. This is your brain right now. You get up and walk around for 20 minutes and your brain will look like it does on the right. Movement lights up parts of your brain, activates hormones that increases brain activity. So a lot of the ways we handle this is through furniture. And a furniture design standard is something that's really needed in the district because comfortable kids learn. How many of you all comfortable right now? Raise your hands. Come on, at least 2. So why would you want to sit in that plastic bucket seat for 7 50-minute periods a day? You get about 7 minutes, I think, between, and then you go sit in that chair again. So the things furniture can help do for us, it can help promote motion, help people move around, both collaborate and fidget a little bit. It can be soft and comfortable, help kids collaborate, have a place to do some more individualized learning. And it can be flexible. We need to give kids ways to move the furniture around, to collaborate, and to create their own environment. And ergonomics, fit for varying body types. You guys all are 5'6" and 120 pounds, I know, so we got you the same chair to sit in tonight. So, ergonomics is really important, and why do we expect every kid to sit in the same size chair? And so those types of standards are all important for kids to be comfortable so they can learn. So student choice is a very important concept in future-ready learning. Free choice for students helps eliminate their individual strengths. We need to give kids the ability to take their path, find the passion, and eliminate their strengths. Having a variety of learning spaces helps facilitate this process. And so that, again, utilizes both sides of the brain. So student ownership. These buildings belong to the kids. You think it's the staffs or the communities, whoever, it's the kids' buildings. We don't have schools without kids. And so we need to foster a sense of belonging for our kids in our buildings. And so home base is what has always been used. And we really need to rethink these types of tools that we've used in the past. Are these still the same types of things that a kid's going to need 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? So we need to rethink how much space we put in our buildings for those types of elements. Display helps kids feel a sense of pride and belonging in a building. And so we need to have standards that reinforce display in buildings. And we need to help kids create space. So those choices happen by letting kids have the flexibility to create space. Sometimes they need to learn by themselves, sometimes with a partner, sometimes small groups. Creating space through flexibility will be a big part of the standard. So the final piece of this is a cultural connection. And as Dr. Collier mentioned, Lee Summit has got an amazing culture, and our community supports the school district like no other. I've been in this district almost 14 years, and every single person from the outside that works in here, they are amazed at the community support we have. It never wanes. And so some ways that we say that, well, first of all, a vision statement. We reflect a culture of respect and acceptance. The cultural traditions that we can establish in our buildings, they bring on and include inclusive environment. So the connections, local signatures, they help connect kids to their building. And I have to say, Dr. Weisenheimer has done an amazing job in this building. If you guys have been in this building for a few years, you can see the remarkable difference between what he's done in the corridors, the look and feel of this building. It's got a brand, the kids feel their identity in this building, and it's really an amazing change. And the kids are engaged in the space, and they're proud of it now. I haven't seen any damage on any of the materials that have been put up here, because the kids are proud of it. We do a great job of connecting our buildings through partnerships. And these partnerships are great because it allows for mentorship with kids of different backgrounds. So what we're trying to do is figure out why there is a gap. The lower socioeconomic spectrum, there's a gap in the engagement that they feel in their buildings, the cognitive ability and achievement. So through all of these standards, it's something that we're hoping to improve on. So I hope I've given you a quick explanation to the why without talking too much. And we're going to move on. I've given you some of the conceptual side of it. I'm going to hand it over to DLR right now. And they're going to show you some images and some explanations of how those concepts can take place and take shape into the real world.
Thanks, Kyle. I can feel my brain already getting red up there, so just getting up and having the opportunity. I'm going to kind of take some of the concepts that Kyle has been talking about, showing some examples, show you some actual examples of how we translated a lot of that concept into physical building. And a lot of the things that Kyle talked about was diversity of space. A lot of times, one of the things associated with diversity of space is just giving the ability for space to change and define it before it happens. So, like this space is a big space and it does a lot of things, but it probably doesn't change from a quiet, small space to a bigger space that easily. So, these are just some examples that we sometimes use as a multimodal opportunities. It's a furniture solution, it's walls that are able to be moved. That's just a simple example. But what I'm going to show you is the idea that the top image that you're looking at there is our traditional double-loaded corridor. We have classrooms on either side, we have corridor down the middle, and we have things going on in the building in that relationship. But what this is actual space, and this is some of the concepts that we use to say, what if, do we really have to have all of these same size classrooms? Because does everyone learn? This happens to be a high school. Does everyone learn the same thing, 55 minutes in the same size space? We put 25 or 12 students in there, or we put 30 students in there, or maybe we should have space for 30 students. And we have this ability to create that kind of area that could be for individuals as well as for groups that are smaller than 25 students. And we take over that corridor space that's there, that usually we just have students that go outside of the classroom and sit down next to the door to do their collaborative work. Instead, we've actually we took over that corridor, and we've now created a learning suite that's got a group of teachers and students, and even a professional learning environment in there for the teachers to collaborate. So the idea of these spaces is to be able to use more than one space at a time, to be able to make the ability for that room to become its own space and for these spaces to still be used. The idea that you can have a diversity of 4 or 5 different spaces in one location. Classroom that does open to this area. You've got an area that can be, you can put 4 to 6 students in there. That can be, it can furniture that has the ability to change the kind of environment that you're in, providing the kind of technology, providing the kind of things that students and teachers need for that. I've seen this space where there are entire classes out there. While there's still students in that small collaborative area, while there's doors open and they're passing back and forth between those two classrooms. And classrooms don't have to look like classrooms. This is kind of that area that we've talked a little bit about in the presentation, the idea that you can have a mountaintop, a place where students can go and give a presentation and feel good about the project that they worked on, and everybody's brought to life. There's not just your classroom, but there's other things that are happening there, as well as a lot of you teachers and some of you may have heard of is the idea of a makerspace. Even getting down to the idea of, as we push down into the younger grades, this is middle school level, these are two schools that actually are existing schools that have been renovated, turned into future-ready spaces that give students the ability to flex out into this larger area, as well as, again, as much display as you can get in a gallery. And then these connected areas, this is a grade level suite. So you've got classroom spaces that open out into open areas where students can use different types of spaces. To make that happen, you can also see different types of furnishings. Again, a collaboration of one grade level classroom environment and elementary schools that give you that opportunity for the same kind of thing, where students have the ability to be right outside of their classroom. We're a little bit more controlled at the elementary school level, but you still begin as students become older at the elementaries that we're working in. Give them that opportunity. It also gives them the ability to become a little bit more responsible. And even to the point of the kindergarten center. This is an example of a kindergarten center where we spend time, and these are some of the things that we talked about and had questions on last night. This is a kindergarten center where there's 600 children. And the idea was that once we started to follow them around, we started to realize that we were losing at least 5 to 8 minutes passing between going to eat, going to do activities. So what we ended up doing is creating an area that is just specifically for groups of about 120 students. And in those areas, everything comes to them and they don't have to move. So we gained about 2 weeks of educational time because the students weren't going from one place to another. So just some of the thoughts as we begin to go to the next level of conversation on future-ready learning. We're lucky to have been involved in your project at MIC. And so this is a good example of just what students said and how it was designed would be important for you to kind of hear.
What's happened at UCM is you've partnered with Lee Summit School District, with local healthcare, engineering, energy, and infrastructure firms, and everybody's now working together to equip students with better skills, allow them to graduate faster, with less debt, and with the certainty of being able to get a job at the other end. That is exactly the kind of innovation we need when it comes to college costs. And I want the entire country to notice it.
This facility is meant to put you in the environment, and it's meant to be driven differently.
Working with Dr. Ambrose was great. He really challenged us to rethink the way education is being delivered, and he's a visionary in that regard.
but I just enjoy the fact that I can come to a place where I feel like I'm not just going to school, I'm actually going to the workplace.
So we began to really challenge our schools to rethink how we're going to approach the design. We didn't want to look like a classroom, so we began to look at corporate precedents in terms of how to organize space.
I chose to come here because it seemed like it was much more hands-on than regular schooling. It seemed like you actually got to experience it more firsthand or more work-related.
So this space that we're looking at now had been programmed as 3 individual classrooms. We blew out the walls, created an open learning environment. It's also open to the public areas where you can't lecture in a typical way. It really requires a flipped learning model where students need to come in and be prepared to work, much like they would be in a professional office setting.
I love all of the glass windows and being able to look in and seeing all the cool things that people are doing. That's amazing, just walking by and seeing people work on biomedical things or building whatever they're building in engineering. That's pretty cool.
So if you're not feeling one like that day, you go to a different one, get it from the scenery, and sometimes it just kind of helps open up the ideas and makes it easier to collaborate.
As a result, was the design of the building that completely opened it up so that a student could actually be in class, even though his class wasn't actually in session. And it really expanded his ability or her ability to actually work on a project outside of the traditional class schedule.
We stay after school sometimes to work on a project, as well as work on whatever we want. That's kind of nice because it doesn't feel like you're at school anymore. It feels like you're working with your friends on some cool project. So it's not like you're sitting down in a lecture. It's you're out here at the shop making stuff.
And I've always conducted myself like the boss, like the department head. I walk around, check on the progress, see if any questions. And then I'll come back to my office and do some of my own work too. So it's really like a workplace environment for them and for the instructors here at Summit Technology. And it's just incredible.
All right, how are we doing on questions, guys? You doing pretty well? Do we need more questions? Okay, I'm getting headshake, but please continue to share your comments. So, I want to move into the next section this evening. This is where we're going to move into some more technical information, if you will, on the demographics and capacities. I'm going to ask Rick Bramer to come up and share some of the work he's been doing to help us understand within the district development and capacity numbers.
Thank you, Scott. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see all of you here. I do this kind of work all over the country, and what they're telling you is true, that this is an amazing turnout. We had this many people, or about the last night and again tonight, and it's a statement about what people in this community believe and how important schools are. It's really a credit to all of you, so I appreciate all of you making the effort to be here tonight. I'm going to try to accelerate what I'm going to say, because we want to have enough time to hear what you have to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this very fast, and we know that it's going to be available to you after the series is over. And I'm just going to try to relate what the main points are that we want, that we see in the demographics, what's changing and what's the same, really. I've been doing this for about 30 years. Like I said, I work pretty much across the nation. I've been working for the Lee's Summit School District. This is my 16th fall of being here to do this kind of work for the district. And I'm proud of that relationship, and that's the kind of relationships I have with many of my districts. We have a regular program here in terms of demographics. It's not just a study, it's something that we keep alive and well. And it has to do with analyzing enrollment. It's not only the grade distribution, it's the geographic distribution of the population, which is really our big challenge right now. It's not really growth as much as it is shifting of the population. And then the need for special programs and how pre-K needs are very extreme right now, and the special needs populations are growing much faster than the non-special needs populations. And that's putting the pressure on pre-K facilities in particular. We're looking at population characteristics of the district, and mostly I'm looking at age, which gives us the second one. Households, how are they structured? Family, non-family? Do you live in a house? Do you live in an apartment? Whatever. And the age structure of the parents, basically the age of the householders. The impacts of residential development in the district. You know, if you've been here a while, it is a growing district, or certainly has been in the past, and continues to be
housing, we're going to see how that's maybe changing a little bit, but there's plenty of potential for future growth. We use two models to do our projections. One is a macroeconomic top-down. How does the district fit into eastern Jackson County? How does it fit into Missouri? How is it impacted by national trends? And then we do a bottom-up, almost neighborhood kind of analysis of how is this neighborhood different than that neighborhood, and where is it in its life cycle? When new houses are built, young people move in, and guess what? We all get older. And we stay or we go. But right now we've had a real streak of people stay, which means our population is aging in place, which means we have more houses and really not that many more kids. And all this supports the kind of things we're doing tonight, facility planning and programming and staffing to some extent. I want to get this concept across to you that this is the neighborhood kind of level I was talking about, where we're not just looking at the district total, we're looking at these 170 different sub-areas in the district, and because we've had the privilege of serving you all for so long, we actually know how many students by grade came out of each one, lived in each one of those red boxes for the last 16 years. So I'm tracking where neighborhoods are in their life cycle as we're doing these projections. It's not just the district numbers. Some of the facts that I think are important to understand. This is the 40th, I call it 40th day, it's really the end of September. The last Wednesday of September is the official count for the state. The blue bars being total K-12 enrollment, and the green line being the annual year-over-year percent change. And so if you go back into the 1990s, you see very, very steep growth curves in the district, which begin to flatten out. Actually, even prior to the recession, and then really went flat, during those few years from about 2008 through 2010 or so. And since 2010, enrollment's gone up. It's only gone up by 550 students. And during that period of time, there's been about 3,500 housing units built. So a big, disconnect between how many students, net enrollment change versus the number of houses that are being built. So that's kind of the first takeaway. We've still got growth, but really not at the rate that we used to have. One of the reasons is this. If I look at the distribution, this is the average enrollment per grade by grade cohort. So amongst the K2 group, which is that red line, you can see how when the district was growing quickly, that was one of the bigger groups. It was the biggest group actually in 1990. And that's completely flipped around now. And the biggest group by grade are the high schoolers, which is now the top line. And you can see that group of K2s really hasn't increased at all since about 2004, 2005. Very, very little change in that population during that period of time. We talk about the neighborhood stuff. This is a point file of all the students in the district. So I get an address file, no names, but where they live, what grade they're in, and so forth. And we geocode that to real-world coordinates so we can relate student characteristics with housing characteristics and housing market characteristics. And this is an important component to the study. It gives us that level of detail. Another thing I want to mention real quick is the distribution of your students. Because there's the historical center of the community being up in this area. And then there's these big land holdings. This is the Property Reserve Incorporated. This is the Mormon Church. There's thousands of acres of land right here in the middle of the district. And really the reason why I'm bringing that up is because what's happened, of course, is development has leaped over that land and pushed it on further to the south. And when it does come time to draw those lines that everybody hates, it's one of the challenges that we face, that we have this kind of no man's land, we have students on either side of it. It tends to limit some of our options. We can use that same data to look at change in enrollment at the small area level, not just that chart I was showing you in the beginning. This is over the last 5 years, the change in each one of those 170 little boxes. So everywhere you see blue on this map, there's been a decline, net decline in enrollment over the last 5 years, which is most of the heart of the district. Where you see that red showing up are areas that we all know where there's development, basically new home development taking place. Otherwise, the enrollment in the district is actually falling. Housing construction has rebounded somewhat. The blue bars here have been put in or permitted actually in each year. And then the green are multifamily. Multifamily is townhouses, duplexes, and apartments. We've always had quite a few townhouses and duplexes in the district. Now we're getting the apartments. And that is changing the way the land unfortunately. We've had some recovery. You can see in the number of single-family houses that are being built. But your market is very non-diverse. It's a move-up market and a high-end market. And we're lacking that entry-level market, which is where the little kids come from. It's where most of the growth actually comes from, too. It's a smaller market for more expensive houses. That's all it comes down to. And because of that is why we're seeing the sudden influx in apartments in the district. Because the economic development has brought, thousands of great jobs to the area. People want to live in your district, and they simply can't afford to. So the response of the market to that is to build apartments for people to rent. And that's probably going to go on for a while. I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. We do an inventory of what can happen in the future. The yellow is where single family can happen, etc. It's a detailed database. I've got lots of numbers. But altogether, it shows the potential at least for 25,000 more housing units in the district by build out, whatever that would be. And to put that in perspective, your inventory right now is about 40,000 housing units. So this would be a 60% increase over what the current inventory is. But given that we're really only absorbing 500 to 700 housing units building per year, 25,000 units is going to last us a very, very long time. So there's plenty of growth potential, and it's us tracking where those projects are that are really going to come online, and then what kind of people are going to occupy as we go through. And most of the development is concentrated, right now in bigger projects. Woodland Trails, down in Greenwood is very active, Foxbury, Chapman Farms, New Mountain View. These are where basically the houses are being built now. And they're concentrated in these areas because of infrastructure. Builders like to be around other builders. This is where the land is, but this is really where the numbers are tending to go up in the district, is where you see these purple boxes. So in terms of our projections, what we're looking at over the next 10 years is about 7,700 more housing units being added to the district. That's the current projection. Last year, last year we had about 98,000 total people living in the district. This is the year when the Lee Summit School District crosses the threshold. We'll have over 100,000 residents in the district by this school year, or in this school year. I mentioned those 40,000 housing units. Now the 7,700 that we see being added over the next 10 years, the big departure from the last 16 years with the work I've done here is that 35% of those we're expecting are going to be some kind of multi-family product. It could be townhouses, duplexes, or apartments. It's not all put it in there, but it's going to be a big departure for the district. And even though apartments tend to generate fewer students per apartment unit versus a single family unit, you compensate for the difference in density, the number of units per acre. The yield of students in acres is about the same for multifamily as it is for single family. So it does actually generate students. And then in terms of what that means in terms of enrollment, where we see the potential for about 1,800 more students in the district over the next 10 years. But remember, that's out of 7,700 housing units. So a lot of people that are coming in, even the kids that are coming in from those 7,700 housing units, a lot of that is being offset by the aging of the population, people coming out, basically out of the system. So that 1,800 students represents only about 0.25 students per rooftop, where we know the current average is close to 25. So again, housing sizes are getting smaller a little bit, and the population is definitely aging. So over time, these are projected then by the little boxes, and we see little units. We're considering that there are probably going to be some additional losses, both in the core here and also in the 3rd Street corridor, where those houses, people are tending to hold on to those, and they're aging in place. And so that's driving and then pushing the growth areas out into the corners, just kind of like we talked about before. The second 5-year period was pretty much the same, except that by then, there's a lot less blue. And I think what's going to happen, what it indicates, is that eventually people will move out of your house. Whether somebody has to carry you out, or one way or another, or you're going to leave your house at some point. It's been ordained. So that's going to happen, but I think that's going to slack, or that's going to increase in the center of the district. We could get a little bit of regeneration in demographics, but we do get some families moving back into those. And the rate at which that happens has a lot to do with the economy, has a lot to do with housing prices. We're going to have to see how that plays out for the district as we go. What I end up getting the district essentially to work with is a chart that's got way too many numbers on it for us to talk about tonight, but this is basically the projected enrollment for each one of the schools. So we have, the actual enrollments here for the last couple, 3 years. You can see how those have been trending. By the way, the coloring here just means blue means it's a small school, red means it's a big school. If it's getting redder, it's getting bigger. If it's getting bluer, it's getting smaller. And just kind of a visual way to kind of interpret the data. You can see you've got some variation between some of the school sizes. And in the last 5 years, whether you look at projections or not, the change over the last 5 years is pretty interesting with, a loss of 126 students in Prairie View versus, a gain of 102 students in Mesa, and you can all read the chart. Now, the one thing I do want to point out here that I think is kind of almost amazing to me was that in the last 5 years, all the elementary schools added together, there's only 25 students from 5 years ago. And whereas the middle schools went up by 100, and all growth, 300 down to 400 growth in this period of time, was at the high school. And that's probably going to continue to be the case until such time we have different kind of housing product available in the district. So we do expect enrollment to keep growing. The economy here is really fairly amazing. Things like the Missouri Innovation Campus and the impact that Cerner's had on the community already and what's going to have in the future. Everything, all of the arrows are pointed up. It's just a matter of how many kids that's really going to generate. And right now we're seeing that be kind of constrained by the type of housing that we have available. So I think that's pretty much all I need to do for now, but I would be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Rick. So why is all this data important? This is a tool that the district and the design team will use as we move forward. We've got images of it on the boards back here, and this is really a living document. So as we start acquiring additional data, some of it will be related to the demographics that Rick just shared with us, but we'll also start to look at program capacity, flexible learning environments. How does that start to overlay with each and every school within the district? So this map is really meant to be a tool moving forward, and hopefully a consolidation of some of the information that we're using to inform us as we progress forward. So as we move into the community engagement piece, I'd like to bring Corey into the stage from our link partnership, and he's going to facilitate the rest of the evening as we move into the discussion. So hopefully you've all had the time to fill out a comment, and that's really going to provide us the data as we move forward this evening.
Thank you, Scott. As Scott mentioned, I'm going to run through some logistics really quick about how we're going to structure the rest of the evening, and then invite the panelists to join us up here. So thank you again for attending tonight. As Dr. Collier said, we've got an amazing amount of engagement in this district. We should all feel blessed to be able to engage with each other and have this very important conversation about the future of your schools. There's a long part of engagement in this process. It's going to run throughout the fall. So you're here now as a testament to the care and insight that you can provide throughout this process. So I encourage you to please come out to the meetings that we're going to have in October and November and continue to engage with this process, continue to build your knowledge around the process, and contribute with your feedback as recommendations are made. During Series 1, we're going to be talking about our overall vision for these summit schools. As Dr. Carpenter mentioned in his opening remarks, there are no preconceived notions around what this plan is. And we really have a blank slate. Please take the information here tonight and use it to form the engagement that you bring to the table. So we've got two series of engagements that are going to follow series 1 here. During series 2 in October, DLR group co-delegates in the district will preview formal solutions or initial recommendations about what the CFMP will look like, and the feedback that you provide here tonight will inform those recommendations. Additionally, we're going to come together for series 3 in November, and the district and DLR group will refine recommendations for the CFMP based on that feedback from series 2. So that's why it's important to continue to engage throughout that long arc that we talked about. The feedback from this series will also inform recommendations that are ultimately provided to the CFMP team. Tonight, we've got multiple opportunities for engagement. Thank you to everyone who's provided questions that will be in the comment cards. Please continue to submit those. We'll make sure that any questions that we don't necessarily get to tonight are answered on the website. Additionally, we're going to do a gallery walk after the conversation. We hope that you'll take a moment to dig in on the concepts that you've heard about tonight, learn more about what the issues are at hand, and please weigh in via the posted notes on boards that are provided as well. All of this will be transcribed, analyzed, and brought into the process. As I mentioned, we've got several opportunities for engagement in every series. Your feedback is critical to this process, and we may be experts in doing facilities master plans, but you're experts in the summit, and it's important that we bring that into the plan that's ultimately developed as a moving better process. Throughout each series, we're offering multiple opportunities for input, including an online survey. The Series 1 survey will be available through Monday. Discussion and conversation opportunities, and as I mentioned, the gallery walk discussions. Please always free to call, email. Feel free to call and email with questions related to the process, and as I mentioned, once again, there's a long arc of engagement in this process, and we hope you'll engage in the process. Following the discussion, we're going to invite you to dig in on some of the information that you heard here tonight, so please avail yourself of the gallery walk, and most importantly, if you've got something to share that you want to make sure it gets considered in this process, please write it down. We're going to take all of that feedback and analyze it for takeaways, and trying to address all the critical questions that are being fed into this process. I want to invite Blake Weaver up for a moment to talk through our stakeholder groups and CFMP website. She's the communications director.
Good evening. Hi. Like Corey said, I'm Kelly Rachel, and I am your new Executive Director of Public Relations for the school district. So I look forward to meeting lots of you in this room and getting to know you as parents and stakeholders and alumni and students. We're so glad that you're here this evening. We are going to talk through the CFMP website real quick. I hope each of you have had a chance to visit this website. Here we're looking at it as kind of a repository for the documents and for the process and for the titles that we're going throughout the fall. So on this website, you'll find capacity maps, you'll find background information, FAQs, you will find this presentation loaded onto that website after the engagement series this week. You'll also find the current online survey available here on our CFMP website. I wanted to mention that we launched a survey almost 2 weeks ago, and we have almost 3,800 respondents to that survey. So we have really wonderful engagement on that survey. I encourage if you haven't taken it, please do so. The average time is taking about 10 minutes for people to complete. They're really digging in on that and taking some real time to be thoughtful in the responses. So thank you for those of you who have already done that, and please do that if you haven't taken that survey. Again, 300 respondents, excellent engagement. We thank you for that feedback. Also, on the CFMP website, you'll find links to the videos. We're recording each of the engagement series, so you can go back and watch those or clarify some remarks, or refer your neighbors or your friends or your family to go watch the videos if they weren't able to be here in person with us this evening on Untitled Chapter. This is a stakeholder slide, and we wanted to give you a snapshot of who's been involved in the process so far. You can see that the community is listed at the top. We find it very important that you as a community give us good feedback, give us some priorities, give us some direction as we embark upon this process. That initial slide Roger Carpenter showed you that was blank. Guess what? That's the plan. There is no plan yet. We're going to continue to reinforce that as we go through the process because it's important that you build the process with us instead of us directing that process at you. So you'll see Board of Education, you'll see students. We have some student voice who are going to come and visit with you and tell you what they think the future of our school should be. You'll see operations team, you'll see leadership teams, the CFMP team. I've seen a couple of our CFMP team members in the audience tonight. So as we go through the process and get those folks introduced to you, you're always welcome to refer to them or visit with them as your neighbors or your family members or your friends even to ask them how they've gone through the process with us as the CFMP core team. Teachers, how are we talking to our teachers and our principals about the process, getting their input? It's important that as the people who work in our schools and for our kids and our parents each day, they have some guidance for us in the process as we go through it. And then, like we mentioned earlier, DLR, Will Evans, Link, and Applied Economics. These people are consultants who are here to walk us professionally through a very comprehensive process. It's important that we gave you a really good process and have the professional consultants' abilities and their expertise to be with us and walk hand in hand with us to do that for you as a community. Okay, we are going to hold on this slide. But like I said, it was important to us that we heard some student voice in the process. So you're going to see a short video about what our students had to say about being #R7 Future Ready.
I think ultimately summit that we all have the opportunities to succeed and make to the next level. I think it's just a matter of realizing those opportunities and taking advantage of them.
This is here for you, and this is people are not don't have these opportunities, and you get them.
The school district offers so many other things. You can go to Herman, you can go to Summit Tech, you can go to MIC.
I like how a lot of responsibility has been given to kids, because there's clubs and things that are run by students, and it really sets them up with those leadership skills, which they're going to need later in life.
To really learn, you have to have a certain level of vulnerability and a willingness to make a mistake in front of others.
I think to learn, to really strive to be the greatest, you have to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to try and fail.
Making mistakes of yourself has to start with accepting others' mistakes. It all begins with you.
Yeah.
I think I know what you're about to say.
I know what you're about to say, because I'm sorry, I missed you go. You say.
Because I think that we shouldn't really worry so much about grades like we do, because if we're really learning something, the grades are going to reflect that. So I think we should focus on the learning portion rather than saying busy work and stuff just to fill the grade books. Can we not do that anymore? Yeah.
We're all part of the summit, so we're all in a similar type of position.
There are rivalries on off the field or on off the court, or in debate or intense. It doesn't matter what you play or what you do. There are going to be those rivalries. I mean, as for me, I don't hate West off the court. They live in the same town. I like them. They're my fellow members of the summit.
I think it'd be awesome, like you said, to collaborate with all the other schools.
Yeah. When I have got together, in functions like district choir or all-state choir and stuff like that, it's just another pocket of people living out with, and there's so much in common. While there are those divisions, I just feel like the things that tie us together at our own schools can just as easily tie us together at our own schools. Yeah.
I want students to be able to express themselves for who they want to be, not who they should be. I feel that once you express yourself without people judging you and you know that everyone's different, it's going to go great for everyone.
I just want future kids of the summit to know that it's alright to fail. I feel like that's the only way you really learn. You learn from your mistakes, and that's how you get better. And to me, I feel like that's really a major part of the only way to get better is to fail.
going to be cool to see, like we talked about it the whole time, is the interconnectedness in between the school, or two areas, I guess.
With that, I'd like to invite the panelists to join us up here, as well as Kelly and Josh, who are going to help to facilitate the discussion. We're going to spend about 30 minutes going through questions. We're going to get to as many questions as we can. As I mentioned, we're going to post all the questions and answers from the district and the consultant team online on the CFMP website. With that, we can turn it over to the panelists to do their self-introductions.
For elementary instruction.
Good evening, Dawn Smith, Assistant Superintendent for Equity and Student Services.
Hello, David Sharp, Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Instruction.
Kevin Gresher, architect with DLR Group.
Kyle Correll, Director of Facilities for the school district.
Emily Norton, Assistant Superintendent for Operations.
Rick Brown, Applied Economics.
You'll notice that there's a lot of people up here. This is a truly interdisciplinary process, and we want to make sure that we have a quick group of folks that can help address questions. So we'll run through questions as comprehensively as we can. And thank you.
All right. Okay, I'm Kelly Rachel again. I'll be your facilitator with this evening with Josh. We have questions that we collected from you as audience members, and we'll dive right into those. But before we do that, one of the things that we did last night that was really helpful, I think, for the panelists and for the audience members is to take a poll of demographically who you are. So if you are an elementary parent, can you please raise your hand? Hello, elementary parents. If you're a middle school parent, raise your hand. Great, hello, middle school parents. High school parent. Hello, team. Okay. How about an employee of the school district? Thanks for being here. Alumni? Good. Students? Students here? Okay. Who am I missing? School board. I'm sorry. Say your pre-K. Oh, pre-K. Okay. Thanks for difference. I apologize. I missed you. School board members. I think I saw a couple in the back. Hello. Welcome. And then if you're on the CFMP team, would you like to identify yourself and raise your hand as part of the CFMP? Hello. Great. Hi. Guys. Wonderful. Hi, everybody. Okay. We'll get started. We'll dive right into some of these questions that we have. All right. The first one is, this is fairly easy, I think, that this is a softball question. Can we get a copy of the presentation deck tonight? So, like we mentioned during the process part, we will post this presentation on our CFMP website. We'll do that after all the engagement series are over after Thursday evening. So early next week, that'll be online for you to access and look more clearly at that data and plus the numbers that you probably couldn't read from your seats. Thank you for the question. All right. This question, I think Dr. Kephart, maybe Dr. Sharp, as Assistant Superintendents of Elementary and Secondary Education, can answer. This is about technology and teachers, okay? The question is, as technology continues to change and expand, what will be the role of the teacher in the future ready learning environment? For example, virtual classrooms, will it change their role at all?
I think that's a great question, especially when we can start it out and talk about our teachers and be the heart of what we are. And as we talk about instruction and as we, as a district, have those conversations with how does instruction change with technology? Will there be some change? Absolutely, there will be some change, but the importance of the relationship that the teacher has with the child is absolutely critical, and the engagement that they help to foster is absolutely critical. So those are components that don't change. It may just be delivery. It may be being able to, as Dr. Collier said earlier, being able to globally expand our instruction to other countries, to other classrooms. That's the additional piece that teachers get a chance to do while keeping those relationships and that engagement very, very high with their students.
To expand upon that, very nice answer, Jennifer. Our students do not lead unplugged lives at home, so it's hard to make. We can't expect them to lead unplugged lives here at school. Technology is a key piece of that, especially for the teachers, the lead facilitator of the class. And so specifically, if you look at a lot of data between 2002 and 2016, the significant rise in the infrastructure of technology within the classroom, the role that it plays with the students' lives, not only with interface, but with seeking out information, preparing information, and delivering that information to be able to take a part of that. So our teachers, which being the key facilitator of that, the training and the devices that we provide moving forward will be a key part of that.
Dr. Sharp and Dr. Kepler, this question is also related to teachers and flexible spaces and learning styles. And this question is, are our teachers prepared to embrace these new spaces and these flex learning experiences? Because I love these ideas, but I don't want teachers to be left behind or hold up the process. Each high school should have the same programs and the same options.
Okay, I'll start with this one, if it's okay with Jennifer on that one. I'll share a personal anecdote with that as Principal Lisa on the West. When we first went to one-to-one, the one-to-one initiative caused our computer labs. We no longer needed set labs. And we made a decision at one point to take a large computer lab and to make a collaborative space out of it between our LMC and a collaborative. I wanted to really take that and make an English classroom out of it, to be honest with you. But I was talked out of it by students and staff to make it a collaborative group space. So what we did with that space, we took all of the labs out of it. We took all the tables out of it. We made a circle. We looked at current research and specific best practices and we make that more student. We painted white marker space all the way around the room for students to use. And then we had collaborative pods. And then each student was connected with a TV and students connected to Chromebooks. And they can interconnect and talk all the way through it. Same thing that we did in our library. When we looked at our LMC, we had big blocks of bookshelves everywhere. Our students could not move, the tables were really square, and they were cumbersome to move, and it was very hard to learn. So we really looked at what we were going to do there. We moved it with the flexible spacing, with movable chairs with wheels to where kids could set Chromebooks, move, book bag goes under. It was very ergonomic to work in. That space exploded in the amount of student and staff use into the LMCs and to that collaborative area. And I know a lot of our schools went to build that, so I want to expand upon that.
I would say in our elementary schools, we're already moving in that direction and have for the last couple of years. So in many of our classrooms, and I would say the majority of our elementary classrooms, we're already in areas to be able to have flexible seating and what that looks like for some choice for students. And that looks like a variety of seating arrangements. So that movement in the elementary school and classrooms has very much started. And then I would also say that movement in elementary schools in some of the open areas. For example, Meadow Lane just added a collaborative space this year and tore down a couple of walls to be able to do so. And that space is being utilized for students now to be able to collaborate on their learning in moving their learning outside of their classroom.
Thank you. This question, I believe maybe Ms. Smith, Dr. Sharp, Dr. Kephart again, has to do with learning styles of students and types of students. Has noise been an issue, been a distraction with existing future-ready school examples? Maybe how would an introvert thrive in these open spaces if they're uncomfortable presenting to any passerbys?
I would say that we've been able to experience that in elementary schools because, like I said, we're in those spaces and we have some open barn door walls between classrooms where there is some noise between teacher to teacher, and that really is the excellence that we have in our teachers to notice what students maybe need to be closer to the front, or maybe at that time maybe the barn door is closed in that classroom. So what does it look like for a student to be able to be successful? And again, it goes back to that relationships with students, for our teachers to know our students and to know what they need. So it isn't an interruption, but it is an enhancement of that learning experience.
Yes, I would agree with Dr. Kephart, but also in a space called equity, we also need students where they So some students realize they need small groups, some students work well collaboratively, and then some students are introverts. I've been one of them. So I understand what that looks like and I think what it feels like. So in a space that is created to, let's just enhance collaborative learning environments, it's okay because there's also a space that we create for students who learn differently, and whether that might be just in either smaller group or just literally one-on-one. Just like referring back to some of the slides that you saw up front at the beginning of the presentation, which we have different spaces that create opportunities for either a one-to-one, a small group, or a student who really wants to be in a space where they're learning by themselves at one point in time.
I just want to add one more thing to that. First, I want to say that those are incredibly thoughtful questions. So you guys are really well informed in your community, and obviously in the classroom thought about these things. I think that how that all brings it back to what we're doing right now, thinking about the master planning of your district, is taking some of the things that are working right now, the things that aren't working right now, and how do we develop some of those and fold those into the master plan in the future. So I think everything that you're saying is just right in line with why we need to be talking about this across the
So Kevin, Dina, Laura, this is probably for you as well as Kyle Varela, maybe for you as well. This question is about capacity. It's pretty straightforward. And the question is, how is capacity determined? How is capacity determined?
I'm gonna talk a little bit about this because we've been going around. We have been involved in the district for quite a while now, talking about some of these things and some of the information that Greg shared with you from Applied Economics about students. And most of the information that Rick has shared is about just the number of students in a building and about where there are seats available for a student. That has changed and is changing. And future-ready learning is kind of modifying the way that we look at capacity. I'm going to let Kyle answer a few of this too. But the idea that we start thinking about students in terms of that seat and the number of seats in the classroom is going a little bit by the wayside. It still is a measure, but we are really moving towards a day when we're thinking more about the academic area and how many square feet do students need in the elementary level, middle school level, and the high school level. We're talking about square footage. We're not talking as much about just the number of students. In our conversations with some of, there may be parents here from West, and they look at the numbers, and when we're done, and you go look at the boards, the three different areas, there are numbers on there, and we can talk more specifically about areas and numbers of students that are designed for those spaces, but the design capacity of a building is not really the efficient capacity of those buildings.
So just to answer the question, and first of all, I love Kevin's response because it is a transition in thinking, and that's part of this process we're going through, and re-envisioning what the capacity of a building should be so that it is truly the most effective learning environment it can be. But to answer your question and the numbers that are out there, the way we figure capacity in an elementary school is purely by a seat count. The average, we use the average of DESI's high and low number, which is across K through 6. The average of that is 23.5 kids. Now we know we can never add a half a kid to a building, so you can always not include the half, so we always round down. So just as a quick example, you take a 4-section elementary school, has 7 grades, that's 28 classrooms, that's 23.5 is 658. I'm not a savant, I just know that because I have done that math a lot of times. So So 658 is the design capacity of a standard 4-section elementary school. So that's the simple math on an elementary. The middle and high schools are based on 24 and 28 students per classroom. And so that's the simple math, it's old school thinking. And as Kevin mentioned, what it does is it gives us a little bit of a slanted view of what really is an efficient and effective learning environment for kids. And so we're in the process of evaluating that and hope to have some good things to come. But 23 and a half, 24, 28.
Thank you, Kyle. This is a very thoughtful question, and it is about the concept of future-ready learning and what that really means. And I think this might be appropriate for Dr. Miller, Dr. Kephart, Sharp. This is a great question. Are there examples of other school districts that have tried this future-ready learning? Are we learning from the output of those trials so mistakes aren't repeated? Or is this a science experiment with our kids? Okay, good question. Are there examples of other school districts that have tried this future-ready learning? Are we learning from the outputs of those trials so mistakes aren't repeated? Or is this a science experiment with our kids?
I think first and foremost, we have evidence of future-ready learning occurring in our district. So I don't believe it's a science experiment. You see what's happening at MIC and 7 Technology, and taking that and making it developmental program, running that pre-K through 12. So it's here in the district. Dr. Kephart mentioned that it's occurring at Meadow Lane. They constructed a nice space there, and the teachers are anxious to use that space. So again, how do we take what we know is already currently working and beginning to expand? And yes, we do look at other districts, and we look at what's called the industry standard, and we want to be on the front edge of that industry standard. We're Lee Summit. We're proud of our accomplishments. We want to continue to push, but I want to be mindful, it is not a science experiment. We want high levels of engagement for our students.
But to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, you know, we a few years back, we're several years into the 21st century, and we talked about 21st century learning for a long time. And that was a big piece of, you know, as a principal, as part of the Greater Kansas City Principal Association, where monthly we got together, principals all over the Kansas City area. We spent a lot of time in each other's schools. We spent a lot of time dialoguing about best practice. We spent a lot of time dialoguing about pedagogy. We spent a lot of time visiting with each other about what that looked like. So yes, we spent that time taking those conversations to look at what engaged looks like, critical thinking looks like, problem solving, collaboration, and those other spaces. We spent a lot of time looking and asking questions and visiting with current programs, current structures, current buildings. We've walked through schools, several schools, with anybody that would be doing anything, and asked those critical questions, say, how'd you do that? How'd that work? What are we doing? People came to us for certain things. I had several folks, families in schools who come to me at Principal Summit Tech and Principal Lee Summit West, the same thing, to visit, to take to what it looks like. What's very cool about it is, no, not a science experiment. It's a blank canvas. You know, 20 years ago when this facility here was built, this was on the cutting edge of education at that point in time. This very same room that you're sitting in, when you look at the design, you have an atrium design here that's wide open for a cafeteria. You take a look at the LMC of this facility here, you go up the stairs, it's surrounded by windows on 3 sides. Okay, it gives that open feel for students to move through. You look at some of the classroom spaces that we have here. So that's the short answer of that. So yes, no, not a scientific experiment. It's keeping up with the times to being able to take our kids to be prepared for jobs that don't even exist now, and to communicate with those soft skills moving forward and connect the space and the education together.
I'll just answer this because I think that is an important question. That the district is involved in a regional group called the Association for Learning Environments. We collaborate regularly with area school districts. We have quarterly meetings at districts that have lighthouse projects that have innovative learning and teaching going on. And so, you know, Liberty, North Kansas City, Belton, Blue Valley, we've been all over the map. This This is not a new thing. Everyone is trying to figure out how new learning styles can fit into their culture, into their teaching. And to be perfectly honest, there are failures. There are people who try to do it physically first, and it just doesn't work. It's not the kind of thing that you can just throw a bunch of wheels on tables and expect things to just happen. And so that's why we're forcing this conversation. We're getting through curriculum conversations and making sure that the proposed changes would truly be effective to the teachers and classrooms.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' comments on that. These next couple questions revolve around boundaries. And so I think Dr. Miller is going to be covered for you, Rick possibly for you as well. And we'll start with this one. Will there be a process involving all stakeholders to determine school boundaries and any changes if necessary?
Appreciate the question, and yes, that's the whole purpose of our layered approach through this community engagement series. It begins with the surveys that you received by email. We ask some broad questions, and that gets us thinking about how to shape some recommendations. Tonight, it's mostly about providing information and data, getting some questions from you, providing more information, opportunities for gallery walk. The next time we come back together, you'll have another survey, again, asking some more probably detailed questions. So when we come back, we'll have some rough ideas. And so hopefully throughout the course of the fall, we'll begin to shape and refine some ideas moving forward. And so your involvement, your feedback throughout the process is welcome, invited, and it's our intent to listen.
Thank you, and this one is very similar in nature. It talks about the timing. So if boundaries are reset, any ideas of when that might happen? Would it affect all levels of schools, elementary, middle, high, pre-K?
So going back to Dr. Carpenter's blank slide, that's still yet to be determined. We will have a better sense of recommendations that we want to make towards the winter. And at that point, timelines are still yet to be determined. So that's something that still needs to be worked through. So we appreciate your patience as we go through this process. And again, we want to listen and hear your feedback.
Great, thank you. And this question revolves around programming. So at maybe secondary, elementary, Ms. Smith, equity and student services, the question is, can you provide examples of what types of programs may be affected or adjusted? What would be the main goal of moving programs, i.e. spreading them out, bringing them together? Again, can you provide examples of what types of programs may be affected or adjusted? What would the main goal be to moving programs, i.e. spreading them out or bringing them together?
Well, I'll start with that. I don't see us moving programs from school to school based on space. I see it enhancing, to be honest with you. If you're looking at programming from an IB standpoint, from a dual credit standpoint, or from an innovation track, or STA or MIC, those programmings are there. Each of our three high schools are very, very similar in everything that we do. We offer 300 some odd plus courses across our course description guide. So I don't see it moving. I see this, the space that we're in now, I see us being able to create, to explore, and to build upon that, to enhance upon what we're already doing in those small pockets of those flexible spaces and groups that I kind of slightly mentioned earlier, which we can expand upon at a great deal from there. But I don't see it changing, moving, or having to shift the program to another, based on right now.
Miller?
I do believe there's some opportunities to look at special programs. I think we've got, Ms. Smith might want to add on to this, opportunities for early education. Currently, Great Gaines is currently at capacity. They have satellite programs. They've got 4 classrooms at Trail Ridge Elementary, 2 classrooms at Meadow Lane Elementary, and a classroom at Westview Elementary. So we know that there's an unmet need at early education. But currently there's really not a lot of space for us to expand to. So early education would be one area. And then I think there's also some opportunity for our English learners. That's also a program that's expanded recently over the years. And I know that many of our parents, the desire for their students to be served in their home school. So those are two possible programs that maybe we'll get to through this passage.
I just wanted to add, our next series of conversation like this is where we might come back with some what ifs and put these up here and have conversations about those to give you a sense of what if we did some kind of program and what would that happen? So what would happen if we did that? So that's the scenario of our next series.
Okay, great. This is another question I wanted to ask, and this relates to equitable spaces reflecting the future ready learning across all of the schools in our district. And maybe Dr. Miller is maybe appropriate for you. You showed us some pretty amazing updates to spaces in schools. If approved, what would the timetable be to update each building to reflect what we saw in the presentation?
I hate to use the blank slide again, but there, timetable would be a decision made by administration and the board. We have a lot of talking to get through on what this standard looks like and how it's applied across the district. And so projects that have happened in the district in the past have happened in funding through April bond issues. That would have to be a decision made at the board level. There's opportunities in Fund 4 for the district through capital that can do some projects too. So, I can tell you that one of the amazing things Dr. Carpenter has brought to our district that we talked about in depth in our administrative meeting this morning is the notion of agility and how we can move efficiently and get things done for kids in a good way and in a timely way. And so all effort is going to be made once we can get through this process, get decisions made. We'll get this rolled into projects and get it through the board for approval. It's just difficult right now, and I apologize for really good scheduling on any of that until we know what the options are going to lead us to.
Okay, great. I think this question has been out there in the community a lot, and it goes as a rumor every once in a while, so I wanted to have an opportunity to either dispel it or to agree with it. There's some talk about students in the subdivisions in the neighborhoods, and then the last part of the question is, why has the 4th middle school and the 4th high school not been built as of yet? Again, why has the 4th middle school and 4th high school not been built as of yet?
Really, it's a matter of capacity and budget. As you've seen in the numbers, the middle schools and high schools, they are all either at or near capacity. The overall capacity has not necessitated a new building yet at this point. And so we have, there may be a question, I'm just going to go ahead and answer it. There's always questions about what property the district owns. And so we own a 20-acre site that is on the northeast corner of 7th Highway and Colburn in Chapman Farms development. And so that was originally intended for an elementary school, but again, at this point with our CFMP process, we're just leaving everything out on the table. We also own a 51-acre site that sits on the south side of Bailey, oriented there, south side of Bailey, kind of behind Home Depot, between Ranson and Hamlin. And so there's 51 acres there that was originally intended for a middle school. And so those are the two pieces of property we own. We do not own any property for a high school. And I've really never looked at that property, even though there's a very common belief that we have a site.
Thank you, Kyle. This question revolves around the well-being of students and potential boundary changes should they occur. The question is, or the statement is with the question, children build strong bonds with their school staff and teachers. They also create friendships and networks with other families in their school and their neighborhood. Won't changes like changing schools jeopardize potentially their mental well-being as as well as affect ways that they build future relationships. So again, around student well-being and an adjustment, should there be one, if boundary changes occur. Children build strong bonds with their school staff and teachers. They also create friendships and networks with other families in their school and their neighborhood. When changes like changing schools jeopardize potentially their mental well-being as well as affect ways that they build future relationships.
I think the district is extremely mindful of the impact of change, and that's one of the reasons why we're going through such an extended process of communication. We value the relationship we have with our community, and our students are a part of this process. I think if change occurs, we will be meaningful and deliberate about how we introduce change to students, whether that's transition, and relationships do matter. But the one thing I will share is students are resilient, and we've gone through boundary changes in the past, and there's fear and there's trepidation, but kids get on the other side of it and have good positive experiences too. So please just know that kids are resilient, and we do want to do everything to be mindful to partner with any kind of potential changes in the future.
Thank you. And so I was just asking Josh how many questions revolved around my neighborhood and my schools and my friendships and my relationships. And I think your answer is very positive and how I wanted to frame that. I would also say that the CFMP team, as we've walked through this process over the past couple months, has been very cognizant with parents on the team. We've been very cognizant that it's very personal to lots of you, to lots of us. This is a very personal matter when we talk about boundaries in schools and neighborhoods. And please know that is not lost on us, and that in fact people that are involved in the process are affected in some ways, just like those of you who are in the audience should potential boundary changes come. So please know that it's very sensitive to us, that it is a very personal matter, and we're going to walk through that with you, and we want to know that we're listening, and that it's really important that you tell us and you collaborate with us as we eventually go down that path. I hope that makes sense to everyone. We know it's personal, and we appreciate the questions. There's lots of them, maybe 5 to 6 that revolve around neighborhoods and schools, and you're not getting a specific answer from us tonight. Again, if we haven't reinforced it enough, we want you to know this. Curriculum question. Dr. Sharp, Dr. Kepner, Ms. Smith possibly. This is about instruction and future-ready learning. Where will the curriculum come from that drives this future-ready learning model? It seems the state will still drive the standards. How are we different? Where will the curriculum come from that drives this future-ready learning model? It seems the state will still drive the standards. How are we different?
It's a very good question too. I would certainly say that the state will continue to drive, and because of being a district that does follow DESE guidelines, we will continue to do that through our processes of curriculum. But the important work that you saw today on the instructional compass, that's really where some of the changes come in. We can have curriculum that teaches, as discussed earlier, that teaches the water cycle, or that teaches the 3 different aspects of government. But it's how we teach that, so it's much more about the how when we talk about future ready than the what. The what will continue to stay there as changes occur with DESE, but we want to be mindful of how to instruct differently and how to utilize a multisensory approach to instruction to include all of our students and provide them the best education that we can.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've met our time allotted for this portion of the evening. We did not address all of the questions that are up here, and we want to also reinforce that all of these questions will be addressed on our website through a log and a tracking tool that we will use. So any question not answered, we'll make sure that we do it on our website. So I'll keep referring you to the website to go there and track and follow the process and learn how we're moving forward throughout this process. Again, we appreciate you so much being here. It means a lot that you took time on a Tuesday evening to come visit with us, ask questions, and hopefully get them answered. The next portion is your opportunity to walk through the gallery boards. We have sticky notes to provide additional thoughts, to provide questions for us. We're interested in talking to you personally, so please seek each one of us out. We'll talk